You know that specific moment at the end of the day? The question of dinner arriving before the energy to answer it? When the phone is already in the hand and the app is already open, and someone nearby is scrolling through options with the particular concentration of someone making a decision that feels small and is not. And you think about your own answer before the question fully forms, which is that the app is not open. Not because the evening has more energy than it feels like it does, because the question of what to eat was already answered somewhere before the evening arrived and started asking, and the answer did not involve a fee, a markup, a tip suggestion, and a 40-minute wait. While across the room, someone is selecting a restaurant, watching the total climb past what the meal was listed at, and tapping confirm on a number that was never quite presented as a number until it was too late to reconsider. Here is what almost nobody calculates about ordering delivery. The menu price is not the price. The menu shows $14. The delivery fee is $3.99. The service fee is $4.50. The suggested tip is $5. The small order fee applies because the subtotal didn't reach the minimum. The total is $28.49 for a meal that cost $14 to make and was listed at $14 on a menu that bore no resemblance to what the evening was actually going to cost. This is not an accident. It is the design. Every fee arrives as a separate line item, small enough, individually, to feel like a reasonable addition to a reasonable subtotal, until the total appears, briefly, at the confirmation screen. After the restaurant has been chosen, the items have been selected, the modifications have been specified, at exactly the moment when reversing the decision feels like more effort than simply paying. And the total is different every time. Different enough that no single order establishes itself as the real price of ordering delivery. Only as this particular total, this particular evening, which felt fine until it didn't. Nobody presents the annual number when you open the app on a Tuesday, the sum of every Tuesday before it, assembled into a single figure that would look very different from any individual evening's receipt. You only meet it later, in the quiet arithmetic of a year that was more expensive than it looked, because the part that felt like a small convenience turned out to be the largest single food expense in the budget, arriving $28 at a time, several times a week, never appearing as a category anyone had named. There is a name for why the delivery total always seems more acceptable than it should. Researchers call it partitioned pricing. Studies by Morwitz, Greenleaf, and Johnson, published in the Journal of Marketing Research in 1998, showed that consumers systematically underestimate the total cost of a purchase when its components are presented separately. Each component clears the standard individually. The delivery fee is just a few dollars. The service fee is just a percentage. The tip is just what you do. The total is what you pay when all of that is already done. The delivery industry adopted this structure because research had already shown that partitioned prices generate higher purchase rates and lower price sensitivity than equivalent consolidated totals. The design is the argument. Never ordering delivery is not a refusal of convenience. It is a refusal to let a pricing structure designed to obscure the total decide what dinner costs. And that pricing structure arrives at exactly the right moment. Research on decision fatigue, documented by Baumeister, shows that judgment depletes across the day. The platform is designed for 7 in the evening, not 7 in the morning, at the exact moment your ability to evaluate a decision is at its lowest. And partition pricing operates most comfortably inside a culture that decided delivery was no longer a luxury. For years, the platforms have run the same campaign. This is not a treat, it is infrastructure. Everyone uses this. The person who doesn't is either missing something or unwilling to accept that convenience has a cost worth paying. Never ordering delivery is not rigidity. It is the specific recognition that the platform's version of worth it was never genuinely evaluated, only accepted, line by line, in the seconds before confirmation, at the moment when evaluation had already been designed out of the process. And the numbers confirm what the closed app already knew. A household ordering delivery 3 times per week spends between $6,000 and $12,000 per year on fees, markups, and tips, on top of what the food itself cost, a number that never appears in any budget because it never arrived as a single number. 3 forces: a brain that evaluates each fee in isolation and never produces the sum. A culture that reframed delivery from occasional luxury to daily entitlement. And a total assembled across a year of Tuesday evenings, quietly proving that the convenience was never as affordable as each individual order felt. It was there the first time the annual number was calculated, not as an exercise, just as curiosity, adding up what the previous year of Tuesday and Thursday and Sunday deliveries had actually cost once the fees and tips and markups were included, and finding a number large enough that it required being recalculated twice, because the first result did not feel like the product of a series of reasonable decisions, even though it was exactly that, each one recorded somewhere, and never added up until now. It was there the evening of not ordering, not because the energy was there, not because the kitchen suddenly became easier than it had been, but because the number from the calculation was still present, and the delivery fee on the confirmation screen looked different now. No longer a small addition to a small total, but a small fraction of something that had been much larger than it ever looked on any single evening. It was there the month the app was deleted. Not dramatically, not as a statement, just as the quiet removal of a question that had been answering itself badly on too many evenings. And the specific discovery that the evenings did not become worse without it, only different. And the different turned out to cost considerably less. It was there the conversation with a colleague who mentioned, without particular concern, what they spent on delivery in an average month, a number that landed the way that kind of number lands when it has never been assembled before, even by the person who had been paying it, every week for longer than they had realized. And it was there, the first Tuesday of cooking something simple instead, not elaborate, not a production, and discovering that it took 12 minutes. Not 40, not the estimate the app gave before revising it upward twice while the evening was already spent. 12 minutes. And the evening still had time in it. These are not people who don't eat conveniently. Most of them have systems. A batch cook on Sunday, a reliable weeknight rotation, something in the freezer for the evenings that arrive with less than was expected. What they do not have is a delivery app as the answer to the question of what happens when the evening doesn't cooperate, because that question was solved before the evening arrived, not handed to a platform that charges for solving it in a format designed to make the charge feel smaller than it is. They are the person who, when someone suggests delivery on a Wednesday night, already has a different answer, something close to this: "I've got something already made. You're welcome to stay if you want." That is not someone who doesn't understand the value of convenience. That is someone who calculated the cost of that convenience once, completely, in annual terms, and found that the calculation changed the answer permanently, the way that kind of calculation tends to, once done with all the numbers actually visible at the same time. They do not evaluate each delivery order individually. That evaluation was done once, not on a Tuesday evening, when the energy was low and the alternative required something the evening didn't have, but at a moment when the full cost was visible and the decision could be made properly. And the next time the app would have been opened, that answer was already settled. Now, finally, the objection. Delivery saves time. Time is money. If the hour you save is worth more than the fee, the math works. Not everything is about the cheapest option. This is not about people who use delivery because their circumstances genuinely require it. A medical situation, an impossible schedule, a living situation where cooking isn't an option. If delivery is solving a real problem, nothing here is arguing against that. This is about the daily default of opening the app because the alternative requires something from the evening that the evening didn't feel like giving.
And the time argument carries less weight than it assumes.
Research on decision fatigue, documented by Roy Baumeister and colleagues, does not show a consistent pattern of the time saved being redirected toward genuinely high-value activity. It shows it being absorbed into the evening in ways that are not meaningfully different from what would have happened anyway, while the fee continues to arrive. The people who never order delivery are not failing to value their time or refusing to participate in modernity. They are simply refusing to pay a platform to price a problem they had already solved, and to present that price in the format most likely to make it feel smaller than it was. Here is what most people get backwards. The person who orders delivery regularly, who opens the app on Tuesday and Thursday and Sunday and confirms the total before it has fully registered, is not saving time. They are paying a significant premium for a service that solved a problem they could have solved differently, in a pricing format designed to make the premium feel like a series of small additions, rather than the single large number it actually is. The person who never orders delivery is not suffering the inconvenience the app was designed to solve. They solved it differently, before the evening arrived, at a moment when the full real cost was visible, and the decision could be made on accurate information. Most people pay for the convenience without calculating what it costs. These people calculated it once and never ordered again. And the person who made that calculation is not eating worse. They are simply eating without a platform in the middle,
which turns out to be considerably less expensive than eating with one.
There is a moment people who never order delivery all describe in almost the same way. It is not the first evening the app stayed closed. It is not the month the number first became visible. It is an ordinary Tuesday, the question of dinner arriving the same way it always does, and noticing, briefly, that the question is already answered. Not because the evening had more than expected, because the answer was made before the evening arrived, and it did not involve a platform, a fee, a suggested tip, or a total that assembled itself in the seconds before confirmation. Not pride in the discipline, not satisfaction at the saving, just the quiet, unremarkable absence of a process most evenings in most households simply accepted, because nobody told them.
The calculation had a different answer if done once, in full, before Tuesday arrived. Not because convenience is always wrong, because the price of this convenience was never what it looked like, and the looking was designed to keep it that way. The delivery was never the point. What never opening the app said about everything else was. 10 years from now, nobody asks how fast your food arrived. They ask whether you calculated what the convenience actually cost, and whether the number changed anything. Do you still order delivery? And has anyone ever made you feel like not ordering was the less sophisticated choice? Drop it below. We read every single one.